We're super excited. Most of you guys have probably seen Krystal on Twitter, but she does social community for HubSpot, and for over 5 years, I believe. And I think you just announced your news that you're headed over to Shopify,
Yeah.
and we're super excited for that. She talks a lot about community and audiences, and she released a really cool article that we can share. But we had her over here to kind of share just how do you start, join a community, and how do you build an audience through your personal brand and through your Twitter account. So I'll give the mic to you, Krystal, and we're excited. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And just want to let everyone know before I start, like if you have any questions, feel free to like drop them in the chat and we can discuss them afterwards, just because I know people get questions as you go. But yeah, so when it comes to kind of like building your own brand out on Twitter and like building out like your own personal community, you kind of want to start with like the purpose of like why you're looking to do that in the first place. So really like dig in and kind of figure out what is the reason behind why you're starting this. Are you trying to do this because you're trying to increase your oh my gosh, the word. What am I? Okay, you're trying to increase your Wow, I can't say that word. We're gonna skip it. So you're kind of looking to determine like, are you trying to get more people to go to a specific website that's on your Twitter account or like some kind of personal account that you have? Are you trying to increase mentions around your name in the industry to kind of determine like, are you an industry leader in that specific space? Are you trying to increase the sentiment or all around of your account? Or are you trying to just get more referrals for some other type of goal and initiative that you're working towards? Basically, what you're trying to do is you're trying to identify the why, the purpose of what you're trying to do and build it out. Something that really helps me when I do it is I like to use the SMART method. If you're not familiar with it, it's when you're doing specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely type of goals. So really kind of outlining how those will work for you and just mapping out the purpose overall. So let's say like you kind of map it out and you're like, okay, I know why I want to do this. I just don't know like, you know, how I start and how I'm supposed to be like diving it in. And you've kind of already picked the place of Twitter. So the best way to kind of start it out is to find folks that are similar in the topic that you're also trying to build the space for. So, you know, just trying to put this out here. Let's say you're trying to really talk about personal branding or digital marketing or something. Search actively on Twitter through Twitter lists, through people on Twitter, through hashtags. I would just kind of go through and start finding accounts. And once you find those accounts, look at their engagement. Are they active? Are they someone where they're actually pushing out contents that resonates with stuff that you want to be discussing and you want to be sharing about? Start engaging with it, get them familiar with it. A lot of people like immediately will see that and sometimes they'll try to shoot directly to DM. And that's actually really off-putting for a lot of people on Twitter specifically, because it comes off across as like, you're a bit like needy instead of like, oh, I'm actually invested and interested in what you have to say and I want to learn from you. So engage, have like those types of conversations, get familiar with them. Who knows, you might even like make friends with them, however that might work. But just kind of be active and show that you're interested in it. Once you kind of have that, that's where you're going to start building your audience on Twitter, because they might start following you. They might even recommend you. And that's when you're going to start tweeting just your thoughts. And so there's a lot of controversy, I feel like, of like how often you're going to be tweeting because you want to be extremely active. And my only key takeaway, if you walk away with this, is do not overdo it. Stick to how comfortable you feel. Like if you walk in there and you're like, I just want to tweet once a day because I feel my most important and my quality type of content will come once a day, stick to it. At least you have consistency with it. If you feel like you can push out 3 or 4 tweets where it's like top quality and it really represents who you are and what you're looking to do, then do that. But you have to be consistent. And what do I mean when I say consistent? It's not like you're going to do it like once or twice or like 2 to 3 weeks. I'm talking months, like months and months down the road. It's kind of crazy to think about, but when I was back in January on Twitter, I only had 280 followers. And I mean, and I don't know if you look how I have now, but it's more just because like that's the kind of pivotal point that I was like, I'm going to talk to people. I'm going to build my network because I want to be able to remember these faces. And I also want to make sure I have a feed of people where it's positive, it's related to around the content that I'm interested in. And it's also, there's kind of like mutual conversation and understanding and kind of just like building and nurturing those types of relationships with those folks that you have on there. So kind of take that into consideration. The other thing I want you to think about too is like specifically for Twitter, a lot of people think like, oh my God, if I just had like 1,000 followers, 10,000 followers, like I'll be where I need to be. I'll be honest, if I look at an account and I see that you have 5,000 followers and you have 2 likes on consistently, maybe on a couple posts, I'm going to look at that account and I'm going to be like, something's shady, something's up there. I don't know why you have so many followers, but no one is communicating with you, but you're really pushing content out hard. I would rather look at your account if you have 300 followers, but you always have 15, 20, 30 comments. I would be like, this person's doing it right. And that's the type of person I would follow and I would try to get more information from. And what you put out into the world, that is your opinion. Those are your thoughts. Do not feel like you ever have to say them in a sense where you have to be like thought leadershipy. There's a lot of people who kind of just want to dive out there and be like, this is the way, there's no other way to do it. When in reality, it's maybe this is the way that I learned how to do it, or this is an alternative to that way. You choose what best works for you because what you're doing is you're allowing your audience to like have that mindset of you're giving them options. People love nothing more than to have their own options versus them to think like you're pushing your opinion on them. So just kind of like think that one out through. So now you're kind of in the how part. This is where you're going to be engaging. Like you're going to be responding on those accounts. They might be responding on you. Also reshare, use UGC a lot. That's super powerful. Where if you find something else someone really likes and it resonates with your Twitter account brand, of whatever the topic is that you're doing, share that information. Because if I go to your account and I'm like, oh, this person's a digital marketer, I want to know everything about it. And you're sharing content of other people in digital marketing, now I might follow them. Or I might see you as like, wow, this person's actively finding content that resonates with this topic. I want to know more from them. You can actually even build off of that. That's where people really expand into the whole newsletter department by taking that type of content, sharing that, and getting it out in newsletters. So there's a lot of opportunities of how you can kind of expand that out. It just depends on when you want to do it. So let's say now at this point, you have your army, you have your foundation of your army, and what do you do with them? What's kind of next with your, personal brand? From there, this is kind of where you decide on how you want to take things and really scale it with your community. It could be like having them sign up for those newsletters. It could be having them join a type of program that you build. It could be part of having people join spaces to hear you talk versus see you tweet of things. It could be doing, personal meetups or DM connections. That's kind of like the point of once you kind of like really build your engagement with a lot of these folks is now you can kind of shift to that personal one-on-one connection and just be like, hey, Dave, I really saw that tweet and your content continues to resonate with me. Where are you going for your resources? Or I really like X, Y, and Z. How are you thinking about ABC kind of thing? And just kind of like building that conversation and or even just thanking them. Just be like, I just saw that tweet and I just want you to know that tweet really, really worked for me today. I needed to see something like that. I actually do that a lot with people where when I see their type of content and I'm like, this is the stuff I needed to hear, I will personally DM them to be like, thank you for putting out this piece of content because it helped me. And sometimes not everyone knows that, how often your content is going to be helpful to other people. So that's kind of like really reassuring as well. And again, it's also building that connection. Some other things to think about too is like, if you have this, personal brand on Twitter, don't always isolate yourself to Twitter. I'm in a very big group on Twitter, and we actually ended up taking it because it got so big and we moved it to Discord just because it was a lot easier to kind of communicate, keep up with everyone in all these different time zones, and to kind of like branch off into other communications. So don't be fearful of it, but I will say the only reason you would do something like that is when the niche that you're in, you've all communicated it. So I wouldn't say like we're all going to just jump to Discord just because I feel like it. Like there has to be a general consensus because you're really asking someone to be like, I now need to take on this extra tool and I really need to build off of it. So, definitely take them into consideration for that. But it's kind of like the standard, like who, what, where, when, why for like community building. Overall, it's a huge investment, especially if you're going to be doing your personal brand. It's an investment over time because you have to be consistent with it. Admit mistakes when you mess up publicly. And I know that's going to sound super scary, but there's going to be instances where you're going to be like, oh, I thought I knew what I was doing and I had no idea what I was doing and I completely messed it up. When people see your faults, they actually recognize you more as like an authentic human, and they would rather hear a mistake so they can learn from it versus always hearing the positivity. Positivity is great, but finding those learnings, those are the things you don't always see on Twitter, and those are the things people are actually like really looking for sometimes. It's actually funny too because Jesse, like when I first saw him on Twitter, he was doing a Twitter Spaces about how can you revamp your personal brand on Twitter. And he really gave me a quick breakdown in terms of how I can help my profile be more digestible to anyone that goes to it, like give it a purpose. So when someone goes to it, they're like, oh, I know what this person's going to talk about. There should be no mystery. That is also extremely key. That is the face of who your personal brand is. Your profile picture, your banner, your bio, those three things. It's sad but true, but those are the three things people are going to judge you on before they even decide to hit follow. Once they get past that, they're going to scroll down a little more and then they're going to go to your content. So everything matters up top, then push it down below. And so to really hook somebody in to be like, this is it. I usually, when I scroll through someone's Twitter feed, I'm kind of looking at the first 3 tweets. Those usually stick out to me the most because the first tweet, I'm like, oh, that's cool. They're tweeting about XYZ. And then I'm like, oh, that's kind of consistent. And then I'll see the third one. And I'm like, oh, now I get what they're really, now I know what they're about. And I think I might follow them for this reason. And then the last thing I'll talk about too is your personal brand with Twitter lists and the power of Twitter lists. A lot of people, people call it like a dated feature. I think it's a very underrated feature. You can have public lists and private lists. Private lists are lists that's only you are going to see. No one else can access. No one else even knows they're a part of. I have private lists of like OGs or like people in the industry where I'm like, I never want to miss their content so I can keep up engaging with them. And these are the folks that when I started out in Twitter that I was like, you were extremely kind to me. You were always receptive to my content. You gave me feedback when needed. So I want to make sure I'm on top of engagement for them. And then the other part of it is I have public lists where it's like industry folks and what I like to talk about community building. So I want those other community builders to know, hey, I see you, I recognize you as like a person in the industry, and I want you to be part of this circle that I'm in. So I make lists public so they know we're kind of in this together. But yeah, oh my gosh, I feel like I just went on for a million miles a minute and I don't know how much time I have. So I just want to like pause it or stop it here and let me know if anyone has any questions.
No, that's great. That's awesome, Krystal. Jesse's taking notes, and I've been watching him, and his hand's not stopping. So we're learning a lot here. I had a quick question. So, when you think about community, and which is very selfless, it's about the unit and what we can do for each other and how we can build each other up. And then you think about a personal brand and how it's focused on, what do I want to represent? What do I want to offer to people? How do those two things, converge, and how do they relate with each other?
So with community and personal brand, if you want them to kind of unite as one, there has to be some type of underlying, like, I'm trying to think of the word, match between the two in a sense, where if I want to increase my personal brand around community, I also need to build a community. I need to be able to put myself out there, be vulnerable, have conversations. And so if you're trying to match by having a community while also maintaining your personal brand, insert yourself into those conversations that other people are having. It doesn't always have to be about yourself. And, where there are accounts that all they do is tweet about random things and, trying to be that thought leader out there, but you don't see any other type of engagement with other channels or any type of UGC retweeting or joining spaces and that kind of stuff. Insert yourself, show people, and show up. Because again, you're in a digital space, not in a physical space. No one can just see you. You have to make yourself be seen. UGC is user generated content. Yeah, yeah. A good example of UGC is if I see Jesse's tweet, I'm going to retweet it or quote retweet it, and that is taking his content, repurposing it on my channel, either giving myself an opinion on it or just amplifying it.
I have a quick question. How much do you tweet about kind of your personal stuff versus like, your company? I don't know if you're representing your company on your personal Twitter account, but how do you balance that?
It's a good question. When I first started out, I felt like I shared a lot about my company. And it was because I was unknowingly filling this void because I didn't know what to talk about. So I was like, oh, well, part of who I am is this company. So I'm going to represent this company. And then over time, it actually started dialing back a lot. And I will only talk about my company on very rare occasions when it really suits the needs of my followers. So they're like, okay, this makes sense for Krystal to talk about. So, if there is like promotions happening or if there is acquisitions happening or if there's like a big product launch, I'll engage with my company's content, like through a comment or liking. But when it comes to sharing, that's something I kind of hold back on unless it's specific for my niche. And I've just kind of learned over time, overall, people aren't really going to resonate with it as well anyways, if it's not related to stuff that they're like, this is why I'm following you. Just remember, you're your own individual. You are not your brand. It took me a while to remember that, which is why the tapering off kind of happened. I felt like I worked at the time I worked at HubSpot. This is my last day. But I worked at HubSpot and I was like, oh gosh, I'm a marketer and like HubSpot's in marketing. And I was like, we have so much aligned. But really, I was like, I'm going to take and apply what I learned at HubSpot and share those learnings that's unique and no one can get through HubSpot's website, through my personal account.
Makes sense. Thanks.
I've got a question as well. How would you recommend like starting people on Twitter, like starting creators to find people in their niche? What would be your to-do list or your action plan to find those people in their niche?
Great question. I get asked this quite a bit too, because you kind of look at Twitter and it's like this black hole of like, where do you start? And the first thing I do is hashtags. And let's say you're a developer, I'm going to type in hashtag developer. And I'm just going to kind of go through and see who's talking about it most frequently. That's the best part of Twitter is, hashtags are so searchable and they're easy to find. And that's when you can kind of go through and you find those people. So let's say I find one person has a decent amount of following and has a lot of engagement. I'm like, great, this is a good match. Now I'm going to see who is this person following, who is this person engaging with, and I'm going to kind of live on their timeline. And it starts with one and then it duplicates and it gets bigger and bigger as you go. Another thing that's really helpful too is searching Twitter lists. Like if you're looking for like developers of Twitter, I would search something along those lines, literally developers of Twitter's list. In the search bar and stuff, and those types of lists that are public will help pull up so you can find who's in those lists, who made those lists. Should I be following them? How big is that list? Another pro tip too, sometimes the bigger the list isn't necessarily always the best. I usually like to stick to lists where I'm like, there's like maybe a few hundred or less, because that gives me the chance to really connect and nurture those relationships. And I can only manage, I'm like one person, I can't go through thousands. So it's easier for me and it's more attainable, which is why I go for it.
Krystal, are there any because everybody here, well, not everybody, but a lot of people either relate to marketing or it converges with marketing. Is there any public lists that you recommend for marketing or branding?
Let's
I know
see.
it's hard to remember.
No, I'm just gonna go on the list. There is hashtag marketing Twitter. That one's like absolutely massive. I'm in a lot of women specific for marketing. I know there's a lot of men in this room. Trying to see another marketing. Let's see. One moment.
Yeah, and marketing Twitter is an awesome community.
Another one too is top marketers of Twitter. That one's really good as well. Best creators on Twitter. I really like that one. Growth marketing. That's a good one as well. And then there's a lot more, like there's just a lot more community stuff I'm involved in. So I would kind of say those are probably the top ones for marketing specific.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, great. Does anybody else have a question for Krystal?
Yeah, I guess I'm
Jose. Go ahead.
sorry. Oh, sorry. Okay, I didn't want to talk over somebody. I guess I'm curious about. I feel like I'm trying to find that balance of how often to engage with other people on Twitter versus trying to post my own content. Yeah, I have married with 2 kids and just full-time work, and so I have limited opportunity to get in and have engagement. But I see that I know how important that is. So I guess I'm just curious if there's some type of rule of thumb or something like that that you would recommend for trying to continue to build that audience while also creating your own content.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think this is where the private list for you specifically is going to come in handy, because this is where you can kind of set aside those folks where you're like, I really want to engage, I just don't have the time. So you can immediately pop open that list. I would say dial down the amount you post. Like, give yourself a goal of once a day. Like, I wouldn't really have to push yourself to exceed that, because you have opportunities. You can post it, you can engage with people on it, you can share that to your fleet. I very much recommend sharing your tweets to your fleets. I don't know why. I genuinely don't understand why, but it really helps push a lot more conversation, especially to DM. So do once a day, and then kind of step away and then do the engagement to everyone else, because the engagement to others is going to be more valuable than the content you post individually, until the engagement becomes so organic that you actually can step away from that and you can just post. It will come. It's going to take time, but the starting investment is going to be engaging with others. Because no one's going to want to engage with you if they don't know who you are.
Right. Yeah, thank you. That's helpful. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
That's a good tweet. There's one.
There you go.
Well, awesome. Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, did you write that down? I can't even remember.
Are there any other questions? Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Krystal, for giving us your time. It really means a lot. I know our other members, they're also going to be able to see this, so I know there's going to be a lot of value added to them too, along with just people on Twitter when we share some of the things we've learned. So thank you so much for your time. I also wanted to give you the opportunity, I don't know if, what's the best way people can find you? I guess it's Twitter, but do you want to lead anybody to a certain direction if they want to know more about you and what you're doing?
Yeah, I'll say for now, feel free to find me on Twitter. If you are not familiar, it's just at hello Krystal Wu. And feel free to DM me. I know you guys all now, so if you have personal questions where you're struggling with something, you need help, I'm more than happy and open to share and chat with you. Just because I know when other people support other people, that's where you're going to get the best results, and I'm happy to share. So yeah, just find me on Twitter. I'm very open.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Krystal. We appreciate it.
No problem. Have a good one, everyone.